Welcome everyone, I'm Lizzie Brooks and this is where muscle meets mindful and seriously good yoga isn't too serious. Today's topic is how to jump forward and back in flow. So if you have not already watched my other tutorial, it's only about 13 minutes long, about how to step from downward facing dog forward, please do check that one out because there's so much in there that is useful to then move to this. And I'm going to link that in the cards somewhere up on top. So let's get started. So a lot of things with this that there's a lot of confusion about is that when people are jumping forward and back, it's not feeling good in their bodies, it's a little too jarring, or they're not getting to where they want their landing point to be. So landing too short and also having it feel bad on the system, especially the joints, low back, things like that, knees. We want to address that properly today. So just a very, very fast kind of going over what's in that other video and what's also in my how to lift yourself up with your hands. I'll link that. Or that. I don't know where the cards go yet. It'll be there. I want you to use that and you can go over that in those videos. But basically, instead of just pulling your belly button to your spine and expecting that to be enough support through your core and through your lift, instead you pull a diamond shape back, which is from the top of the pubic bone to the low ribs to the sternum, and that diamond shape scoops in, and that you're attempting to draw all of that with a rounded cat position. You're drawing that back rather than just like beep, the belly button goes back. Not as much of a lift, and you want to really integrate the cat pose a little bit more. So I'm just going to show you, and you might see yourself in some of this, and based on where you see yourself, you can choose how you need to adjust. All right, so here we are in a downward facing dog. And I would recommend that you kind of watch this and practice with it, kind of watch and practice, or watch it through one full time and then practice. So in downward facing dog, a couple of things that I see that make it a little tougher are hands are too close together. So if the hands are too close together, then the feet can't actually land between the hands. Now, some people land slightly behind the hands, as I do, but still making the stance wide enough is helpful. Okay, so you don't want to go so narrow because that's actually going to make it harder because you need to make a little more space for the legs. So let's go shoulder distance or slightly wider. Come into your downward facing dog. Just make sure you have a distance between your hands. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the ankles. I know, weird, right? So I like to use the ankles like a little bit of a flipper action, kind of like this. And before I jump, I also create more of a whole unit, bringing the ball joints of my feet together rather than jumping from here. It's kind of like taking the separated energy and then trying to put it into one up front. But instead, bringing it together as if it's one unit seems to help me to be able to draw the energy in, up, and forward, okay? So let's just take the ball joints of the feet together. You can try this with me if you'd like. Ball joints of the feet to touching, and we're just gonna go up, as high up with the heels as you can, and down. And when you do this, allow your shoulders and your pelvis to shift forward. So instead of staying back, and just lifting and lowering the heels here, okay? Not that, although that's really nice for your hamstrings and your calf strength. You're going to lift, put a little cat pose in, draw the organs back in that diamond shape, and allow yourself to come more forward, and then go back. Okay, so we're doing a few things as one working unit with the hands separated, nice and that good distance apart. Okay, and then from there, you've gotten that sense, a little bit of cellular memory, great. Now from here, you're going to work in a spring action. Hips draw back, and then forward, bending the knees, hips towards heels, and back, shoulders more over the wrists, and shoulders more over the wrists. So you've got that action going. Okay, now we're gonna try to marry them together a little bit more. Round and lift. Round and lift, all right? So heels back, right? Then up with the hips, straighter legs around the spine, shoulders and pelvis more forward. Press it back, round it forward. And you'll start to feel that this is extremely cardiovascular. I mean, when we're talking about jumping, that's obviously cardiovascular. So take a little break, roll out the wrists, catch your breath. And then we're gonna bring that into play as we jump forward. So you can actually use a shoelace or a hairband or something, not a hairband like Metallica, but, oh God, I'm dating myself. A hairband, something to put on your mat that is a visual for you, okay? So sometimes when we add a visual and we think, I'm going to jump and I'm going to land on that, the brain really takes that information and allows us to jump a little closer to the hands. So you can add something or you can just visualize a circle. Let's take that not all the way up to the hands, but let's do something that might be relatively doable, okay? So maybe a little more forward of where you usually jump. Draw that circle. And then we're just gonna get integrated again with that movement. Heels, bend the knees, heels lift, draw forward. Cat pose in the spine, pelvis and shoulders forward, deep core diamond draws back. Using the ankles here, right? Good, coming up to those tiptoes. All right, now from here, you're going to find your spot and imagine jumping into it. All right, so play with all that, and you might even start, walk the feet a little, just 2 inches closer to the hands, all right? Let's do that to begin. Reach back, come forward. Everything comes forward, and then this time, see if you can spring and land a little bit closer to the hands. Doesn't have to be between the hands, but a little bit closer. Get long on an inhale and fold a little bit on the exhale. Shake that out, maybe bend the knees a lot, and then come on back for a break. Okay. So you tested that out, saw what happened. I want you to try it a few more times because Rome wasn't built in a day and jumping forward and back in downward dog is never built in a day. So I want to make sure that when you are landing, you're landing with bent knees. So straight legs and kind of floating down is not what this tutorial is about. That's a more advanced. This is before that stage. So your knees, you want to be a little more shock absorbing so that you don't jam, as we talked about at the beginning of the tutorial, you don't jam into the knee joints, the lumbar, all of that. So let's just play with it a little bit more, see how we do. Step the feet a little closer to the hands than you're used to. And then after we play with this, I will add another element. Lifting, lowering, lifting, pumping, and then spring and come forward and go back. One more time like that. Take your time. Try not to overthink it, right? Don't overthink it and hop. Woo. Now, what we're adding on to this is imagine that the back of the pelvis is going to hit an invisible wall in front of you. Now, when I say this to people, a lot of times they think, if I take my pelvis up that high, I'm gonna fly over and roll over and fall. If you have a fear issue there, as most people do, and that's totally normal, you might put a blanket or some pillows in front of you. That's not going to happen. Your brain won't allow your pelvis to come that far over, okay? That would be a huge jump, but just to feel a little bit better, you can add some padding. You're going to imagine that you are taking your pelvis and hitting the back of the pelvis, the sacrum there, on a wall, invisible wall at the top of your mat, okay? And all that's going to do is allow the pelvis to get more height, to bring the legs higher, to help you land closer to the hands, because it's all connected. All right, so hands gently wide, big toe ball joints together, make space between the hands, start to find your spring action. Remember, if you're hopping from here, let me just show you, if you're doing everything I'm talking to, but you're not taking the body forward and rounding, you're likely to kind of spring, 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 and land. If you keep your pelvis back, you're kind of gonna land here. So if you imagine that the pelvis is hitting a wall behind you and you're bringing everything forward, you will come a little closer. And again, I'm not going into a big handstand jump. We're way before that, way before all that advancement, okay? This is a safe jump that takes care of your body, that gets you maybe a little closer to your hands. One more time from here, using all that we've learned, and hop, okay? Even closer that time, right? If you wanna work with blocks and imagine that the pelvis is coming higher because you have to jump onto something higher, a block can be helpful, but you gotta be real careful because you can trip over it. But that would look something like this. You would start with the block here, and maybe start with a lower block, maybe inch your way up. So that would look like this, playing with all of the movements, and then hop onto that first block. Okay, that one okay. Maybe you'll try the second block, okay? And you can inch up as much as you like. I have 2 sets of blocks, and one of them is a shorter block. So for that particular skill, you might want to use a shorter block and then inch your way up, okay? And then for jumping back I find there's a lot less confusion about, and it's a little easier for most of us. But the main thing is that you are bending your knees to jump back. Case in point, let me show you. So a lot of people, they're here, and then they say, now I'm gonna jump back to downward dog. Okay, that doesn't feel good. Over time, that will be very bad for the joints, okay? So instead, we're talking about bent knees and jumping back. I'm about to go over that, and then I will go over jumping back to chaturanga. If that's something in your practice, not necessary. When you jump back, do not start, if you don't know how to yet, do not start with your hands alongside of the feet and then try to jump back. It's gonna be harder to do it from here. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. But there's a movement of weight forward and then you'll come back. For those starting out, put your hands a little forward and to the sides of the feet. So not here jumping back, but here. Then there's a little more room underneath you to bend, right? And then you're just gonna do a little hop back with bent knees and the heels are lifted. And there you go. There are ways where you can play with forward and back with a hop hop and a hop hop, where you actually separate rather than hopping together. And that separation can be extremely useful before you're ready to hop the feet together, okay? So my main thing with stepping back is bending the knees and putting the hands more forward of the feet than having them on the same line as you're learning. And then the last thing, if you are using your hop back to go to a chaturanga, same thing. A little more advanced if you started your hands here to hop back, a little less advanced if you start a little more forward. I want you to bend the knees first, just like when you're hopping back to downward dog. Bend the knees, and when you hop back, the arms bend at the same time. So it's so much about timing. You can take a look, heels will lift. I'm gonna allow my weight to come forward. So instead of staying back in the feet and trying to hop back and keeping this back part heavy, I'm going to lift the weight a little bit, draw the core musculature back by rocking into the hands and then stepping back, or excuse me, hopping back into the chaturanga, which might be followed by a vinyasa or a partial vinyasa, okay? So I'm gonna show you another look. I'm bending my elbows as I'm moving back, rather than, and you could do this too. You could do a hop, I'll show you the difference. Hands forward of the feet, I could hop back into a plank, soft knees, then go into my vinyasa, okay? Or I can go directly into that chaturanga. Hands a little forward, knees bent, heels lift, move my weight forward, and then as I'm in the air, I'm kind of bending my elbows, chaturanga, okay? So if you come back straight leg there, that's more okay than if you jump back into a downward dog and keep your legs straight. Here isn't gonna jam the knees as much as with gravity and the weight coming down there in the downward dog. So there you have it. I hope that this is useful to you. This is probably something that you want to practice over time, over and over again. and don't expect it to all happen in one day. Stretch out before you go really deep into these practices. And please do hit that subscribe button and like, and send me a comment if anything is unclear or if there's anything that you want to work on. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and come back and see me. Namaste.